Well, hey, everybody, Ben Stuart here, and I'm excited to answer your questions about singleness, dating, engagement, and marriage. And I'm here with some friends of mine, Elizabeth Staggers and Thomas Barr, folks that we've known for quite some time, and that are the three of us. We've got single, engaged, and married here to talk about questions to help the people. Yeah.
Come on.
So thank y'all for being here.
No, we're excited to be here. And like you said, we're about to get into some questions and talk through these 4 stages of relationships. But a big part of why we're doing this and why we launched this special podcast series is because you, A, wrote the book, Single, Dating, Engaged, Married.
True.
And B, just re-released the book with some updated statistics, content, and extra chapters. So it's been really fun as someone who was a student at Texas A&M, went to Breakaway, worked at Breakaway, and got to hear the writing and the formation, and then you giving these messages that then turned into a book. It's been, 10 years?
Yeah. When were those sermons?
Yeah, they started. I mean, when I first came to Breakaway, I did a series of talks on dating right out the gate. And then this will date me, but that same year, I remember college students saying like, hey, you got to see this thing called Facebook. And they were showing me this deal. And then it was, the mad rush of iPhones, YouTube, all this. Right. And then I watched over the course of, I was at Breakaway for 11 years. I watched their questions about dating change. I watched the frustrations increase. I watched the difficulties increase. And so it was my last series of Breakaway. So it was about 10 years ago. It was my swan song there of saying, having stood at this intersection, having the privilege of knowing young people, navigating the complexities of life and love, seeing the landscape getting more difficult, let me give my best offering of how to help you navigate this. And so that was, at the end of Breakaway, then we turned it into the book. The book's about 7 years old. And it's been amazing to see the longevity of it in terms of influence, It's been great. And so...
what was the stat we got just yesterday? In 2024, it was the number 3 book for young adults in dating. Is that correct?
Yeah, for the ECPA. Yeah, so that's crazy to be that long.
Yeah, it has some staying power.
Exactly. And so I think it's a lot about the, we did this talk. I did it at the Capitol, was invited by the chaplain years ago.
I did not know that.
Oh, man. And we showed up and it, he said we had to move the room 3 times because we kept overflowing. We ran out of food. It's crazy. And he goes, are you famous or something? And I was like, I think it's the subject, brother. I was like, none of these people know who I am. So we just got here to town.
Right.
You're hitting on a felt need.
We're hitting on a felt need. And the reason we're re-releasing it, and then I want to get to these questions, is I certainly haven't changed my theology and haven't changed so much of the philosophy I present in this book that I think is rooted in the Word of God, of how we're meant to navigate the way we treat other human beings. But some of the data has changed and some really hasn't statistically in people's lives. And so we wanted to add and update some of that. And then the biggest question I got after the book was how to break up. You've kind of got these sections of single, dating, engaged, married. What about single, dating? I don't feel so great about this. How do I get out of here? So can you write that chapter? And so we added that as well. And I got to record the audiobook, which I didn't the first time around. So that was nice too.
That's pretty fun.
Yeah.
In your own voice.
And there it is. But along with that, we thought we would do this because I get questions all the time. We'll stand in the lobby, visit with people about it. And we realized it'd be fun to put something else out that kind of pairs with the book where we just answer questions people submit. So
here we go. We put it out there online on social media to send in your questions. We had a phone number set up where you could leave a voicemail, so we'll get to hear some of those. We had an inbox set up where if you prefer to write out your questions and your thoughts, you could submit them that way. I will give the caveat that we wanted to protect everyone's privacy as these topics can be sensitive. And so we have changed some names, some details where necessary. We trimmed down some audio.
Some people did not protect their own privacy.
No, but out of the kindness of our hearts, and Matthew, who helped edit all of these, we have just trimmed some things down. So your question and the principle of it remains intact, but your identity and details have been guarded for your privacy.
There it is.
But I'm excited to jump in. So I've got the first question we got
Great.
via email.
Yeah.
We're going to dive right in. Pastor Ben, if I have the desire to marry and have kids, will my desire be fulfilled? I have constantly prayed for the Lord to take that desire if it's not in his will, but I consistently still feel the need to be a wife and a mother. I'm 25 and feel so lonely considering my whole friend group is married.
Man. Okay. Yeah. I would say a couple things to that about perspective, and then maybe some practicals about what to do with that, which incidentally, thank you for that question. I would say in terms of that desire, that longing for marriage and for motherhood, I think that longing is good. So let me just affirm that. Like that is pre the fall of humanity in Genesis chapter 3. I mean, you see at the beginning of the word of God, you see as God creates Adam, he says, it's not good for man to be alone. I'll create a helpmeet suitable for him, someone that fits together with him. Physically, but also emotionally, they complement one another as they engage in God's purposes for humanity. So that longing for deep connection, that was before sin ever entered the picture. And then the first commands to Adam and Eve were be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth. That desire to create life, to be a part of that amazing gift God gave us, is good. So I just want to affirm that desire. Some people feel ashamed of that longing, like I wish I shouldn't feel this way. And you're like, you should. These are good longings, you know. Healthy desires, but now the question is, what do we do with them, right?
Yeah.
And I would say in this question, you mentioned that you're age 25. I would say, just for perspective, the average age right now of first marriage in America for women is 28, and for men is 30. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. People are getting married later and later now, and there's some challenges with that.
Yeah.
But I noticed you said I'm 25 and all my friends are married. Like, that's probably a Christian environment. Like Christians tend to get married earlier. Yeah. But I would just say it's right to long for marriage, but don't feel like you missed the boat, you know, because you're so young. You know, you've got some time.
Yeah, that's good.
And I also would say too, just in terms of the perspective side, the landscape has gotten more complicated. And I could talk about this forever, and I know we're going to move on to other questions, but let me just say this because this will help everybody. As you look at general trend lines over the last 10 years, really more than that, different stats are saying different things, but they're all landing around the average young person in America, 20s, 30s, spends somewhere between 6, 7, 8, 9 hours a day on their phones or screens. That just wasn't the case a generation before. So you think, what was happening in those 6 hours before? So you think of that, like what happened in those hours? Just imagine all those hours you're looking at your phone. Go look at your phone and see your screen time. Imagine if you had all those hours and no phone, what would you do? You would find a human being to talk to. So what happened was there was just more socialization in the past with neighbors, friends, etc. Socializations with friends became dates, became romance, became marriage. So what we're seeing in society broadly, and it's not just America, you're seeing it everywhere where broadband internet becomes available. Yeah. You're seeing less socialization, less time with friends, less dates, and then less marriages. That trend line is all over the place. So I mention that to say, I'll talk sometimes, and particularly to young women, that they personalize, is something wrong with me that I'm not married? And there might be something wrong with you, but it's just good to also go, hey, there are larger cultural forces at play, and it's not personal. It's not your fault. It's your problem, but it's not your fault, right? Now, none of this is advice on what you should do. It just helps you not beat yourself up, right? So we're getting to the practicals, I promise, and you'll have to tell me what you think. So I'll say this too, because the question was about I desire to be married.
Yeah.
Even before all the modern complications, where in the past people got married younger than they do now, God has still made people wait longer than they like all the time. And that doesn't mean you're wrong or you're evil or God's wrong or God's evil. It doesn't indicate that something's wrong with you or with God. God makes people wait often longer than we want for our desires. He does, right? Why? We give a whole sermon series on that. Sometimes it is because you're not ready. Why has not God not introduced me to somebody? Sometimes God makes us wait because we're not ready. I mean, you look in Exodus, there was a short path out of Egypt to the promised land. And Exodus 13 says it. God could have taken them through the way of the Philistines because it was near, but he didn't, lest they see war and turn back. He was like, there was a quicker way, but y'all weren't ready. And I had to take you the long way to forge you in the wilderness into the type of people who could handle the promised land. So some people, you go, why is God delaying introducing me to the one? Because you're not ready. That's real. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's just not time. It's not about you. It's you could look at the Bible and say God was moving all of history for the arrival of his Messiah, but there were people waiting with expectation for generations for him to appear. But God's timing was perfect, right? Sometimes it's for God's glory. Jesus was asked, was this man born blind? Was he a sinner or his parents? And Jesus said, neither. It's for God's glory. Like, no, God kept this guy blind until his adulthood for this moment right here. Don't be blind anymore. It's like, because it would bring glory to Jesus. Right. So this guy had to just cool out as a blind person for a while until I could come into his world. Mm-hmm. So all that to say, God has different reasons. But let me get to the practical side.
Yeah.
Will you get married? That was the question. Will my desires be fulfilled?
Yeah.
I don't know. I am not a prophet. I don't know. But I will say, what do you do with these desires? The Bible's really clear with that. What do you do with the desires of my heart? 1 Peter 5:7 says, cast your anxieties upon him because he cares for you. So when you say, I have this longing to be married, what do I do with that longing if I can't expedite getting married? I take that longing and I say, Lord, you tell me to hand it to you. Mm-hmm. Let you know what I long for. Let me give that to you, right? And I cast those onto him because I believe that you care about me. Yeah. And if you can linger in that place, invite God into this place of longing. I mean, the psalmist said it in Psalm 94, when the cares of my heart are many, your consolations cheer my soul. He says, I got all kinds of problems, but when I put them in front of God, he begins to console me and I don't feel as distressed about them. He hasn't even mentioned the solution to his problems. It's just, the anxiety decreases in God's presence. And that's available to you when you're single. But the last thing I would say about that is this. Where you're standing right now is right in the center of the battlefield presented in the scriptures where every man and woman stands. Will you trust God or not? That is the battle in the Bible. From the garden, Adam and Eve, hey, there's a tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Do you trust God when he says don't touch it or don't eat from it? And Satan tells them, God's holding out on you. It's an assault on God's character. If you trust God, he will keep you from an abundant life, Eve. You have to rebel in order to live. Don't trust him, right? Don't trust God. At Abraham, I just want a kid. That's all I want. God's like, I'm going to make you wait 25 years. And the test of Genesis is, will you keep trusting God? Will you trust me even when I'm not giving you what you want? Yeah. Right? James, do I believe God is a good father, right? That gives gifts to his children. That is the nature of temptation. Yeah. Every trial will bring a temptation, and the temptation will be the deception to believe God's not a good dad who gives good gifts. It's the same problem with Job. Yeah. When God takes from me or withholds from me good, will I curse him and die? Or will I say, even though he slays me, I will hope? So I would just encourage you, friend, it's not wrong to desire, but it's wrong to let those turn into resentment. It's wrong to turn them. You can go a million different unhealthy ways with it. I can say clearly at the outset, cast those cares upon the Lord. You are right in the middle of the major battlefield for a human being. Will I trust God with my heart or not?
Yeah.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that? Maybe my deeper question behind that question is maybe a narrative that I was told, that if God gave me the desire, he wouldn't have given it to me if he didn't want to grant it. So how do you respond to maybe that dilemma that like, oh, he gave me this desire to be married, therefore it's going to happen. Like I wouldn't have this desire if he didn't want it to happen. Have you ever heard that question?
Yeah. There is a logic in that that has validity. Paul will talk about that. Paul will say, it's better to get married than to burn with lust. So he's saying, like, if you have a strong desire for sexual intimacy, get married. He said, we don't have to over-spiritualize it, you know? And so for some people, they're just like, all right, that's me. So we just got to figure this out, And there's ways that people can overthink who they should marry, et cetera. You just go like, if I have this desire, it's not wrong to marry. Paul encourages you to do it. And statistically, you're still likely to get married. It's gotten harder. People are waiting longer, but still the majority of human beings are getting married, right? But I would hesitate to say, and therefore it's a guarantee. I have all kinds of desires, but I have no guarantee I'm not going to die today.
Right.
I don't know that. And God doesn't owe it to me. And that was a real groundbreaker for me when I was young. I wanted to get married. And I told God that I want to be married, but I don't want to spend all my 20s chasing girls, like manically trying to find her.
Yeah.
And I just remember laying in bed one night and going, God owes me nothing. He doesn't owe me a wife. I'd like him to give me one. But what he wants me to do right now is to take all my longings, my hopes, my dreams, my visions, and rest on his character, not on the promise of a spouse. You know, all he's giving me is him. And is that enough? And it was enough.
Yeah.
And so now when I do have a wife, she's not an idol. She's a friend. She's a co-heir in the grace of life. But she wasn't something I was telling God, give me or else.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. It's funny. You went to the deeper question, which I think is helpful. I, as you just fully out in my relationship status, I am single. And so I can relate to this.
I'm sorry.
That's fine. This question that this woman sent in and fully affirm, I think some of the most helpful advice I have gotten is that trust and contentment are lifelong skills across any season of life.
Yeah.
And hearing that in like really candid moments from friends who were married and said, I thought this would solve it all, but now I'm frantic about having kids, or I'm frantic about our financial status, and realizing, okay, this is what I'm wrestling in contentment and trust in this season. But this internal dilemma wouldn't go away necessarily if I were married.
Yeah.
And having to sit with that.
Yeah.
But then I think too,
it's a good insight.
Yeah. But I think too, on more of the practical side, sometimes I just have to give myself grace when there's bad days where I am feeling discouraged or disappointed. And then practically, I try and embrace, well, what's really fun about being single that my married friends are complaining they don't get to do. Because it would just be kind of a waste to not embrace the pros of this season if I'm so focused on the cons. And so there are moments where I'm like, I don't have to budget for diapers in this season of life. I'm going to eat out a little more. I'm going to stay out later with my friends because I can sleep in the next day. Like I'm not as accountable to other relationships in my life. And so I want to be found fully embracing the pros that my friends are telling me they miss.
Yeah.
Because who knows what life holds, but this is what life looks like now.
I think that's a fantastic response. I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's good.
Well, we've got our first voicemail up next.
Hey, Ben, just wanted to say huge fan of you and just what you're doing in DC and just with single dating, engaged, married. But my question really has to do with, I'm a young adult in Texas, and I was just curious what your thoughts on dating apps were. You probably have already answered that question before, but just wanted to hear your thoughts on dating apps and how to go about that wisely and how to do that well, or is that something we should even do as Christians? Anyways, thanks for all you do and hope to hear your answers soon.
That's great. Dating apps. I would say, let me give some advantages, some disadvantages, and then maybe the role I see they should play.
Okay.
Advantages of dating apps, as I've heard people talk about them, is they've said one advantage they experience is clarity of knowing what this encounter is about to be. Now, I say that in some cases, it's actually not clear from apps, and they're built different ways, and some people are on apps just to get a hookup, and some people are actually looking for a future. So I'm not, and the apps can change what's most popular, et cetera. But what I've heard people say, the benefit they experience, they say, at least I know this is a date, rather than, because I know we're both on here predicated upon the fact that we are looking for a date. So I'm not just at an office party misreading social cues. I know that this person is saying I would like to evaluate potential romantic interest. So they like that clarity. Now, again, there's apps that's not clear at all. People's intentions are different and people aren't being honest, but that's one of the benefits I hear people say. The other benefit I hear people mention is opportunity. And I've seen this with people I love. I have friends and folks who I've officiated their weddings. They met on apps. So I don't have an animus against them. The opportunity, meaning, like, I had a roommate. He met his wife, married her. They lived, less than 10 minutes from each other. But because of modern social life, their circles never overlapped. They have this beautiful, wonderful marriage, and you're like, y'all were like blocks from each other, and we're never going to meet. That's really wild. And so this app sort of gave you a door of opportunity to find each other, a door that used to be open and easier at other times in modern life. So again, not to harp on the past and what it was like, but for all of human history, we lived localized lives.
Right.
You lived within a few miles of everyone you knew. I mean, you lived in the same town or village, or if you were in a big city, it was the same block, and you knew everybody there. And now with cars, online shopping, online working, you can go for a long period of time and not have normal human social interaction. So like when Donna and I moved onto our new street, we knew one person on the street, and she hosted a party, invited us over to meet the neighbors. And I was like, oh, that's cool. That's what these people do. It is not what those people do. They had most of them, or several of them, never met in their lives. And like, you go, that is modern life. And so now Donna and I host parties regularly. Those are the only parties that happen. But we realize modern life means like, we don't even know the people who live by us. But that used to be within that social web where you would meet people. And so I see dating apps as kind of a patch to fix this delocalization, this disembodiment of human experience that's happening in a unique and accelerated way in your generation right now, And so it's harder than it was in the past to meet people. It's harder. Yeah. And apps have stepped in to try to solve some of that. I would personally rather see people meet within the context of community. I'm a big fan of us fighting for embodied experience. It's why we do church the way we do. It's why we do so many social moments at church. Proverbs 27 talks about that. In moments of calamity, it's better to have a neighbor who's near than a brother who's far away. So it's in the book of wisdom of, hey, cultivate deep relationships with your neighbors. Like, because you're going to want that support structure when life goes sideways, rather than suddenly trying to get to a brother who's far away. It's interesting. Now, the dangers of apps. So, is the selection criteria can be shallow, right? And Proverbs 31:30 says that charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Charm is deceitful. Anyone can woo you for an hour, and or they can put a witty comment online and you just don't know their character. Are you worthy of my trust? And beauty is vain, meaning it doesn't last long. It fades. Beauty goes very quickly. So usually on apps, you're getting a couple witty comments and a photo. These are the criteria could be deceptive and will disappear. And it's on this basis you're going to initiate till death do us part. Yeah. It's dangerous footing. It's shaky ground, So that's tough. And I think the evaluation process can be isolated. Doesn't have to be, but in the past, dating happened in a communal context. You would meet each other's families, friends. You were around each other. Often it's, I swiped, clicked you, and we met at this place, and the two of us visited, and there was no one watching and going, hey, I know he was cute, but he was straight up weird, man. You need to get out of there. Like, you need that sort of non-biased observer, right? I think other dangers are dehumanization. I mean, even the creators of some of these earliest apps said that. The more you swipe these people, the more you tend to dehumanize them. That this is, I don't go, that's a person who has value made in the image of God, And there's the paralysis of too many choices. I mean, back in the day, it used to be like, who's the cutest person within 3 blocks? Now you're like searching continents, and it's just it's a bit much. So all that to say, my thoughts on dating apps, they're not a sin. I know believers who've met their spouse on them, and I'm supportive of that. Yeah. But I would say, I would hope they would be secondary. And I would encourage you to do all that you can to pursue and cultivate local embodied experiences. Set boundaries with your devices so they don't take 6, 7 hours, 8 hours of every day. commit to serving at your church, showing up in small group, community groups as much as you can. And I know it's gotten complicated in these days. Get into proximity with other believers in your community, because then you get to watch people and how they interact with other people. And you go, what are you really pursuing? Are you really pursuing the cause of Christ? What is your character? Are you really honest? And so before we initiate the possibility of a romantic connection, I've been able to watch some of the most important things about you for when we get potentially married. So that would be my take. Not a sin, but secondary.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah. I mean, this question has come up a lot. And even just within the context of our church, I know a really amazing couple that they are engaged. They were both actively a part of our church, matched on a dating app, and went on a date and had not met, and found out on that first date, oh, we're both actively a part of this church. So to your point, sometimes it is just by law of chance, there's great people you're not meeting.
That's a good point.
But then I've talked to other girls that have just kind of lamented the awkwardness of, I was on this dating app and I matched with this guy that I've recognized from church, and he matched. But now if I see him in the lobby, he's weird and he walks the other way. It's like a weird, you've kind of built a connection that maybe you wouldn't have acted on in person. And so it's both. I think it can be used well, and it can be really awkward. And that's maybe just what this generation is dealt to navigate.
Sounds like y'all are saying it's not like a black and white issue. It's not like dating apps are evil and you need to go back to the old ways. There's discernment and wisdom in using them.
Most of these questions are going to land in the book of Proverbs, where it's not a moral right or wrong. It's a wisdom right or left. You know, this isn't bad, and it may be the way you have to do it. I mean, look at the longest chapter in Genesis 25. It's Isaac meeting Rebekah, you know, and marrying his wife. She was not in his neighborhood. Their servant had to walk 500 miles to find this girl. So sometimes you go like, that's not ideal. Okay.
Right.
But load up the camels, let's ride. You know, and so like sometimes it's just going to take that. And so when people are like, look, I couldn't find her, and so I got on an app and I found her. You go, you know what, man? All right.
Yeah.
So there's dangers to it. You can't assess character as easily through this. And it can feel dehumanizing, where you feel like you're on a marketing block and no one's buying. That it can be bad for your soul. Right. So as much as you can, embody your life. Be in an embodied circumstance with other humans. But there's nothing wrong with the app.
Yeah.
All right, next question.
All right, here we go.
Okay, this one's a little long, but we'll get there. I'm a 26-year-old girl, and not me, but this the questioner. I'm a 26-year-old girl and became close friends with a guy, but he moved across the world for the next 2 years. Over the summer, he had feelings for me, but my heart was closed to him. Then, a few months later, the Lord very, very clearly and surprisingly opened my heart to him. I wrote him a letter to share this, but by the time he responded, his affection for me had gone. He communicated with grace and clarity, but I do not know what to do with my heart. How do I maintain our friendship, ask the Lord for big things, protect my heart, surrender to whatever reality he intends to implement all at the same time? Yeah. So in essence, what do you do with a heart in that situation?
Yeah, that's interesting. He was interested in her. She wasn't interested. He took off. Now she kind of likes him, and he said no.
And he's across the world.
Yeah, so you're not going to hang out with him.
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, I would say, if he said he's not interested, what are you going to do? I think of it like tennis. Like, you hit the ball over, I'm interested in you. And he's like, I don't want to hit the ball back. Well, then you can keep running around the court and swinging the racket a bunch, but that's not going to make the game go on. Like, if he doesn't want to play, then y'all aren't playing a game. You're not hitting back and forth this relational volley. So I would say, you put yourself out there. He said, for whatever reason, I'm not ready for this. Then you need to go about the act of closing off hope.
Yeah.
Stirring up desire and expectation that there could be a future. Now, could there be? Yeah, he could change his mind, but I don't think it would be good for you to keep feeding that desire and hope if he's communicated that's not where he's at. And so with that, I would encourage you to not actively pursue cultivating a friendship with him at this time. Like if you've developed romantic feelings, and he says, no, I want friendship, then I think the natural thing is to go, okay, but I'm going to have to reset. I just think the downshift from I'm interested in maybe marrying you to let's be pals it can happen, but not right away. I mean, I think you've got to detox a bit, and say, I've got to let my emotions reset. You got to reboot. So I would not try to pursue and cultivate a friendship with him at this time. It doesn't have to be angry. You just say don't. And so I would say with the desires, I mean, for me, your text would be, Hebrews of Abraham with Isaac on the altar. All Abraham wanted was a son. That's all he wanted. And God had him name himself, right? Exalted Father, and then Father of many nations. And he's like, okay, take that thing you want and put it on the altar in front of me. It's that test of, do you trust me? And I think for you, you go, okay, he said he's not interested. You can't make him. You could try, but I don't know that that's healthy. So take these desires you have and put them on the altar before your God and say, these are yours. And maybe he hands them back to you. Maybe the guy comes back from overseas and goes, you are all I want in this world. Or maybe he doesn't. And you go, thank God you dodged that bullet. I don't know, because I don't know that, but I just said, like, what do you do with these desires?
Yeah.
If he said no, you have that data. Don't keep feeding the fuel of the desire. Put it on the altar.
Yeah.
Maybe what's the threshold of pursuit? Like say you have a crush, and should step one be just, hey, I have a crush on you. Can I take you on a date? Or are there ways that I can, I don't know, express my interest towards them? What is too much expression of interest? Like how many letters is too many letters? Does that question make sense? What is the threshold of pursuing someone? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, at some level, someone's going to say, no, I am not interested in you in that way. And you're going to cross a line into harassment, right? So like at some point, you're a danger. Yeah. Now we got to get lawyers involved, so you just go, hey, man, for me, I'm a real respecter of God runs my life. And so when I dated Donna, I was in that place of like, I have all kinds of hopes and dreams, but I can't barter with God. I can't be like, well, I'll serve you if you make sure I get this amount of money in this job in this town. I realize I'm like, I have no marketing chips. Like he could kill me tomorrow and I'm not a victim. He's going to kill all of us at some point and we're not victims. This whole life is a gift. Okay, God, you put me here and I don't even know why I'm here. Ultimately, I can tell you what I want, but I don't even know what I want. I don't even know I'm a dog chasing a car. I don't know what to do if I get it. And I want to get married, but I don't know I just have to give all that to you. And so when I met Donna, I told her, I'm like, I'd like to take you on a date, but I trust God with my life and yours. So if this isn't something you're interested in right now, it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where like, if someone's like, I'm not interested, and you're like, well, but let me try to really make you interested. I'm just like, I don't know. I wouldn't do it.
I do think though, maybe to offer a different perspective, I think a thread of what she's talking about here is something I seen and experienced, and I kind of jokingly refer to it as girl brain sometimes of maybe like in my personal style, like I'm not one, like you asked for a threshold of pursuit. I'm like, I don't really think I've pursued any guy.
Yeah.
And that's more personality and style. But I do think there is a propensity in your mind to wonder, okay, but he sent this like meme. Was this trying to start a conversation? Was this this? Was this that? And I constantly ask myself the question, how has he asked to be thought of? Which is helpful for my brain, at least, of if a guy has not asked me on a date, then he has asked to be thought of as a friend. And so I'm not going to entertain the spirals in my mind of, well, it's this coded to mean that. Does this mean this?
Yeah.
Right.
Because I think in a lot of ways you end up hurting yourself in that. If you've kind of built up meaning to certain actions and then a guy starts dating someone else, you make that much more painful than just a simple disappointment.
Totally.
And so I think even in this example, I feel for this girl because I think it would be harder knowing at some point he did have feelings.
Yeah.
But to your point, you have to land back on. But right now, he is asked to be thought of as a friend.
Yeah.
And I would even affirm like it from the little I know, it makes sense that you would have developed feelings for her, because if he did respond with clarity and kindness, like, that was probably someone that was worth having a little crush on.
What a great guy.
Good.
Yeah, which that makes it harder. But again, you land at, how is he asked to be thought of right now?
Yeah.
And in real time, he's asked to be thought of as a friend. And so maybe just guarding your heart, but also your mind, and what do I entertain in the rabbit trails of meaning.
That's good.
Yes. And that's where, to me, and I don't want to turn all this into the answer is Jesus every time, but I do think for me, I go, the safest place, it's better to trust in the Lord than to trust in princes, right? You just go like, at the end of the day, I have to go, Lord, you're going to guide our story. And if you bring him back around, okay. If you don't, there's somebody else, or you got me. It's okay.
Yeah.
But that entertaining can make you crazy.
Yeah.
And I'd be careful with that.
Yeah. With that, up next, we got a voicemail.
Next one? Okay.
About breakups.
Ooh. Oh, great.
Hi, Ben. I'm here with my sister. We had a question about breakups. I am friends with my ex, and we both go to church, and we're both like just lovers of the Lord, and it ended really well, and we're probably better friends than we even were when we were together. So I'm just curious, what is your advice on staying friends with someone that you broke up well with? Is it wise? Boundaries? There's not a lot of resources on breakups, so we're really thankful for that extra chapter. Thank you, Ben.
That's why I don't know if on the final that voice is going to be altered, but that was a little low.
Was the altered.
That was the no, that's what I'm saying. We just heard the altered one. Just listening to her voice, I'm like, it sounds like she's about to like give us a ransom note or something. But anyway, sorry. Yes, exactly. Lots of questions about this. Part of why I wrote that extra chapter on breaking up. Lots of questions about breakups. I'll say this was fascinating. I read an article, I don't have it in front of me, a couple of years ago, where it was talking about the emotional difficulty of breakups. And it was a study done. And I did put it in the book. I just don't have it in front of me. I should have done that. But it was talking about the emotional difficulty of a breakup is not directly correlated with the length of a relationship as much as it's directly correlated with the intensity of the bonding in dating. So the difficulty of the breakup is directly related to the intensity of the bonding in the dating experience. And so if you go on a couple dinners with somebody and you go, I'm not really, I think we're probably better friends, you can actually make that downshift to friendship fairly well, and that's fine. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't necessarily her experience, but just I'll say this, what really complicates that, can I be friends with my ex-boyfriend or whatever, is any sexual contact at all really complicates that whole thing. Because sexual contact is a bonding agent. It's designed to be that way. And that's why God protects it behind this boundary of marriage. So when you're evaluating if I want to be married to somebody, you're meant to keep as much of that physical contact away simply because of the act of evaluation. But if while you're dating somebody, you're going, oh, we're on dates or we're boyfriend and girlfriend, so now I get to touch you or get to access to your body in a variety of ways, and I'm getting the dopamine hit of that. I'm getting the little oxytocin hit of that, which is a hormone that encourages bonding. I'm becoming addicted to your body. And some people, when they rush into sex early on, it feels like love because I'm addicted to your body, but I'm not asking those evaluating questions of like, do I like hanging out with you? Are you someone I trust? Do you lie? Do you say things that aren't true? Like, are you someone with character? Like, all that's kind of getting lost because you're spilling this chemical of sexuality into this experiment of seeing if we mix together. And so then when you break up with that person, if you've been really physical, it feels like intense chemical withdrawal because it is. You're withdrawing from this addiction to the dopamine hit of their body, the oxytocin of the bonding with them. Paul said it to the Corinthians in 1 Corinthians 6, flee from sexual immorality. Every other sin is committed outside the body, but the sexually immoral person sins against your own body. And he was just saying that like, hey, you're going to hurt yourself doing this. So he's saying it out of pastoral care. So that's why I advocate a strong restraint of physical contact in dating, because dating is evaluating, do I like hanging out with you? Because if you get married, most of marriage is not going to be sex. It's going to be hanging out, talking, but I've met so many people that they were just romantically like just zapping with each other physically. And then they get married and they go, I don't actually even like you. And we don't have any interest together. And that's really sad. So you hold that sexual part back. Like Song of Solomon says, do not awaken or arouse love until it pleases. Hold it back as much as you can and then evaluate. Do I trust this person? Do I like this person? And what I've seen in church circles is, to get back to, can you be friends with a person you broke up with?
Yeah.
If you do it that way, the person who they're touching each other a lot, this is my girlfriend, this is my boyfriend, and we're on each other and we've moved in together. And then it feels like a mini divorce. And then you got to separate the kids and the dog and the friends and who gets the church. And you just go, you're not supposed to do any of that in dating. But if you go, no, dating is just evaluating, do we, as best we can tell, discern that we're people who are pursuing the cause of Jesus, have a character shaped by him, and is there a chemistry to how we hang out? A couple dates, you may go, I don't think I see a romantic future of us. Okay, you can downshift into friendship way easier. And I've seen a lot of people do that. And sometimes you go, I'm going to need a beat because I was starting to visualize a future with you. I need to go out back and let that sort of die out. But a friendship can come back. It can. And I've seen that in my own life. The women I dated when I was before Donna, the ones where there was zero physical contact, easy to see them, easy to visit with them. They're friends, So that's where I would encourage you in that regard.
Do you think it's fair to say that the person who was broken up with should set the tone on what friendship or even contact looks like?
I mean, I think they should be. I don't know how to separate out the percentages, but they should have a voice in that. 100%. I had this isn't a breakup, but I thought with the earlier question, I was clueless in my 20s. I was on a trip and we befriended, all these guys and girls befriended each other. And this one girl would write letters. I kind of thought she was writing them to everybody. So she would ask me kind of how life was going, how's school. I'd write her back, write this and that. And then she wrote a letter that was like, about how things I said had made her develop feelings for me based on how I was talking to her. And I was like, oh no. Like I had no idea I was making her feel that way. Yeah. And I was like, oh, I thought you were just being nice to like everybody. And I realized that was a bit naive for me. This is a wisdom prudence thing. But then she had the maturity to say like, thank you for that. Because I told her that, like, I'm sorry, I did not mean to lead you on that way. And she said, thank you for the clarity of that. I'm probably just going to need to not connect with you as much. I need to take some time. And I'm like, yeah, that's probably right.
Yeah.
I was good because I didn't even know that's where we were. But I think she had the awareness to go, I'm going to need to go take these feelings out back and shoot them. So I'm going to need a minute. It's oh man, well, I'm going to need to learn how to be more prudent in how I treat people's hearts. I was not being malicious. I was being careless.
Got you.
Man.
So there's a space maybe for saying like, hey, I need some distance. I need some space in this season.
Yes.
If we're in the same church community, maybe I need to serve on a different team than you were on. So I quit seeing you every Sunday or something.
Yeah. But on the flip side of that, I see a lot of people say, I can't date someone in my church circles because then if we break up, I have to leave my church. And you go, you're assuming dating equals this catastrophically romantic physical thing that becomes a breakup. And you go, no, you can actually go on some dates with people in your church and go, hey, I think we're not a fit. Step back from that experience and remain at the same church and remain friends because you haven't made it weird because you haven't been all over each other. And I've watched that play out. And so when I hear people talk to me like that's impossible, I go, it's not impossible because I see it.
Yeah.
So don't be scared to date within your community. Just don't bring illicit sexual activity into it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Next question. This is a written one. I'm single, but how do I learn to view marriage in the way that God wants me to God wants me to, when growing up, marriage was displayed as strenuous or hard or difficult.
Mm.
So how do I learn a view of marriage in a way that God wants me to see it versus the one that I grew up seeing?
Yeah. I'm sorry to hear it. And that's a tough question. I would say where our biological family fails, God is so gracious to give us a spiritual family, you know? So when I graduated from college, I was, 24, I was a youth pastor. And my pastor said, I want you to preach a sermon to the whole church. And I said, great. He said, I want you to talk on parenting. It's like, of my hypothetical child? Like, what on earth? You know, so it's kind of like, we both laugh at it now. Like, neither of us knew what we were doing. It's a church plant. But I did two things. I went and got a bunch of sermons on parenting, which was kind of a joke. I basically gave Tony Evans' sermon and tried to sound like Tony Evans, which was not a good idea to do. But I also went and interviewed, I started watching who are the healthiest kids I know in our youth ministry. And I'm going to go interview their parents. And I think that's what the Lord had as a bait and switch on that. He's like, your sermon's going to be trash, but whatever, we're getting started there. I just want you to, because they're as clear as a bell in my mind. I can still picture them today, what table I was at. I was sitting with these healthy marriages and interviewing them and taking notes for a sermon. And it was like, this isn't for a sermon. This is for your heart. And God was introducing me to these healthy marriages all through our church and giving me a picture of what could be. I didn't know what a present dad looked like until I did. And it was in my church family. And you think about in the New Testament, all these people were coming out of a Greek culture, a Roman culture that was harsh, sexually broken, exploitative, particularly of young women, so damaging. And God was building beautiful church communities and marriages and beautiful communities. And so I'd say grieve that you didn't see that modeled in your home, but you are not doomed. I mean, the grace of God is too good for that. And I would just say, like Paul said, follow me as I follow Christ. He said, there's only one mediator between God and man, the man Jesus Christ. So we don't come to Jesus necessarily through the means of some other person. But when I say I'm following Jesus, Paul, as an older brother in the faith, told this community, well, then follow me. Get in my wake. Watch how I move and move with me.
That's good.
So I'd encourage you, how do you improve your view of marriage? Get involved at your church, serve, and when you see healthy kids, go interview their parents. I mean, really, when you see healthy marriages, ask them if you can take them to lunch and offer to pay for that lunch. They probably won't let you, but just say, I just want to interview you for an hour on marriage and then walk away. A lot of them, that'll be the only lunch you have with them. But about 3 or 4, some of them to this day, my kids think that they are their grandparents. And that's good.
That's amazing.
Because in a sense they are.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. This next voicemail is also talking about some family dynamics in a different context.
Okay.
Hi, Ben. My question is that, I feel like the last 3 relationships I've had have ended pretty similarly, where the parents of the girl I've been dating have been embittered against me for one reason or another, but usually it always ends up around boundaries in dating. Often the girls I date and we establish boundaries, and then her parents find out about those boundaries and then not like them. And I'm a follower of Jesus. I'm involved in ministry. I live, breathe, and everything I do to serve Jesus. Yeah, I'm just struggling with parents. I think the question is about parents of girls I'm dating. Thanks, man.
Okay. Yeah. Obviously, with all these, I don't know all the details of the story. So I don't know all the details of your story, brother. But I will say, if this is the 3rd time you've had issues with a girl's parents, the common denominator and all that is you. So you probably need to get some people that love God, love you, and are not intimidated by you to give you some honest feedback of how you're coming off with people. Because something's going wrong with how with your dynamic, and you're going to need to figure out what that is and have ears to hear it. Because if you tell them like, no, I'm good. No, I have all my reasons lined up, but you've got a wake of broken relationships with parents behind you, you need to have the humility to go get some answers that you may not like. Now, generally speaking, for everybody else, and you included, as you think about parents, scriptures talk about what? I mean, you look in Ephesians, the husband is meant to protect and provide, is essentially like to love your wife like Christ loves the church and gave himself up for her. What did he do? Sin was going to destroy the church. So Jesus stepped in and took the hit, right? Protection of the people I love. And no one deprives their own body. You feed for it and care for it. Love your wife like you love your body. So these ideas of I'm meant to protect you from what could harm you, and I'm meant to provide for you so you can flourish under God. This is meant to be woven into the heart of godly men. It's woven into the heart of parents. I'm here to create an environment where the people I love can flourish. So if you're a dad, you're supposed to do that for a young girl. I'm supposed to create a home environment like Adam did. God created the garden, but he told Adam, you cultivate it and keep it. Keep means protect. Cultivate means let it reach its full potential. Adam, that's your charge. Whatever I put in your hands, create an environment where it's safe and can flourish. That's what a man does. You just walked into the garden and said, give me your baby. He doesn't trust you. He shouldn't trust you, right? You are an alien in the garden. You're a threat. And so what you have to do is unload the guns, drop the clips, put your hands up and go, I'm not a threat.
Right.
I actually join you in the desire to see your girl win. I'm not here to use her. I'm not here to exploit her. I'm not here to make her my servant. I'm not here to make her walk 2 steps behind me. I'm not here to, I am here to join you in seeing the girl that you have raised be all that she's meant to be under God. You have to convince those humans that's your intent. And I'll tell you the way you do it is you don't show up at their doorstep and tell them how it's going to be with your girlfriend. No. You show up at their house when you meet them and you ask them 100 questions about their life. You take genuine interest in what they value. You listen as they talk. You benefit from their wisdom, and you just let them be older people in their lives speaking wisdom to you and concern for you. And then as best you can, you celebrate all you can celebrate about their lives, and you allay their concerns. Because if you marry that girl, those are the parents of your wife, the grandparents of your children. You will see them every day, every holiday for the rest of y'all's lives. So invest in making those relationships as healthy as possible. And I can say a lot more about that, but that would be my general kind of guideline.
Yeah. It's funny. As you were talking, I'm thinking about some good friends of mine that they got engaged, and her dad was very concerned and wanted them to live together before they got married. That was kind of his hill to die on. And not a believer, and just coming from a different perspective, that was his way of trying to protect his daughter. Of this scares me, and I think this is the better choice. And they pushed back on that. And her now husband was really patient with her dad. And now they've been married many years, and they all have really great, healthy relational dynamics together. And, and again, I don't know the specifics of this caller, but they held their boundaries in a way that, to your point, confirmed and alleviated any of her dad's fears. Of, no, we're not going to live together. We're going to get married. But it's out of a reverence and a care and protection. It just looks different in different boundaries.
And that's a good cat, because they may not express it well.
Yeah.
But you have to look under it and go, what's the emotional energy driving their response? Like, I had a friend want to get married to this girl, and the dad was adamantly against it. She has to finish college first. And my friend was like, well, we may just elope. And I'm like, bro, don't light the bridge on fire before you even started it. What's her dad's concern? He's concerned you're going to rob from her opportunity. And he's concerned because of y'all's age that you can't provide for it. Like, he's concerned she's going to get pregnant and you can't pay the bills, and she can't work, and then she doesn't get a degree. He's afraid you're going to ruin her life. And that's a valid dad concern. So maybe the way he's saying it to you isn't nice, but you need to get past his words to his heart and meet him there. And this was with a younger guy. So I said, so you need to bring a budget that includes her tuition. And you need to you need to show him, I'm not going to look up 6 months into marriage and make her quit everything because I don't know how to pay rent. Like,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I've figured out how to care for her. And then maybe you do wait and work in the fields while she finished school. If that's a hill you die.
Yeah.
Like, what's a year? What's a year, 30 years into your marriage?
Yeah.
Give it a year. You know, so that's where I'm like, you've just got to hear those concerns. You may not bow to all of them. Like he says, move in together. No, I'm not going to do that. I got to serve the Lord, not men. But your concern is that I'm not going to take care of her. So let me spend some time with you enough that your fears decrease.
Yeah.
And let me clock that time with you. For Donna, that was less the case with her biological family. It was more the case with her friends. They were very protective of Donna. I was a threat to them. You know, I was an alien in the garden. And I realized they had all these assumptions about me that weren't accurate.
Yeah.
And so I could get mad at them and try to isolate her from them, or I could go win them. You know, I'm just going to go win her friends.
Yeah.
I'm like, let's spend time together. Because I think if they get to know me, we'll be okay. And we were fine.
Yeah.
So don't make war when you can make friends.
Yeah.
You know, the best
That's
way to destroy an enemy is make them a friend.
Right.
Right? That's
Yeah.
what Jesus did with us.
Right.
That's what you do.
Right. I think it was you when I was contemplating talking to Audrey's dad about, asking to marry her. And I was like, this is such a big deal. I am so nervous. I'm shaking thinking about it. And maybe when we were driving to Baltimore and I was talking to you about it, and I was like, this is such a big deal for me. And I believe it was you that was like, hey, it's not just a big deal for you. It's a big deal for him.
Mm-hmm.
And like, this is a nerve-wracking thing for the father as well. This is a sensitive subject for him. It's not all about me.
Mm-hmm.
There's a father on the line here. And that was so helpful because, when you approach a dad of a girl, you're intimidated. And you're like, why is he being so short with me? Does he hate me? Is he coming at me?
Yes.
And there's this inclination to be like defensive and be like, let me stand my ground. But I think that was like a good perspective shift of like, there's care and love wrapped up in this. He wants the best for her. That was just very helpful.
You want him to care.
Yeah.
If a dad is indifferent about protecting his daughter, that's a tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
That's a tragedy. You want someone that cares.
Yeah.
And so when he sees you as a threat, you go, that's actually good.
Mm.
You know?
Yeah.
And so now I just have to show him that I'm not.
Yeah.
That he and I are actually on the same team.
Yeah.
And what can often happen if you do that is y'all will become good friends.
Mm.
You know?
That's good.
That's at weddings, that's who's slapping people on the back, you know?
Yeah.
Her dad, his dad, we did it.
Yeah.
You know? And you want that. You want that man to trust you.
Yeah.
He's handing the care of his daughter over is the way he conceives of it. And he should conceive of it that way.
Right.
You know? And you need to show him you're not going to hurt her.
Great. Okay, last question of this episode.
Okay.
Here we go. When you are dating, at what point do you talk about your sexual past and mistakes? The conversation will come up, especially in Christian relationships, about each other's past sexual experiences, but it's something I dread. Since I sadly do have a past where I've fallen into those sexual sins outside of marriage, how do you know when it's the right time to talk about it? And in how much detail do you go into?
Yeah, those are great questions. And I think it's very reasonable to be nervous about. You're talking about vulnerable things. You know, you look in Song of Solomon as their relationship is deepening. He pictures her as a dove up in the cleft of a rock. You go, that's fragility. He's talking about the heart of this woman that he wants to woo and call to him. And you go, there's a place in romance where you just sense we're dealing with the matters of each other's hearts. This is a sensitive place. And when you're talking about areas of decisions you've made relationally that you wish you hadn't, these are often places that are very tender emotional places, you know? In terms of when's the exact time you should bring that conversation up, there's not like a date 3 or 6 month. It's not so much about time. It's about the assessment of the relationship. So, and as you're talking about dating, there's not distinct separate stages, but they flow together. Like when you first meet somebody, it's really just all evaluation. Where are you headed in life? Do you seem like someone worthy of trust? And do we have any kind of sort of common interest that we can talk about, you know? And if you go like, hey, I think our lives are going the same direction. They want to honor God. I do too. They seem like someone who's worthy of trust. And then it moves from like evaluating, do I even want to spend time to you, to connection of like, I enjoy spending time with you. You start moving to evaluating, to connecting of like, could we see ourselves together? Could we have a life together? And then that ultimately moves towards union, where you say, we do want that. And you get engaged, right? Engaged says like, we want to unite our lives, our futures, our finances, our family together till death do us part. When do you talk about what you did physically and relationally with other people? Not date one and evaluation. And I would not encourage it after engagement, because you don't want them to feel tricked and trapped, you know, that, or lied to. So it's got to be in this dating phase as you're starting to move from just evaluating to like, should we even go? Date one, you're just trying to figure out if there's a date two. But after a few dates, when you start to go, I see a connection, I could see this going someplace. I think the key pin of when you bring this up is this a person worthy of trust? Because if I share with you a vulnerable part of my life, what will you do with that? And you want to watch that person's character. Because let's say whether you get married or don't, you're still going to share some parts of your soul with somebody. Are they worthy to hold a dove in their hands? You know, so you just got to watch long enough to go, are we pursuing towards a connection? We see a future. And do they have a character I can trust them with sensitive parts of my heart? Yeah. And that's when the conversation starts. Now, let me say this. Why have it? Why share maybe some of your past experiences, particularly sexually, with other people? I would say for your benefit, why you want to do it is you don't want to have secrets when you get married. I'm not asking, I'm telling you, you don't want that. Like, what do you want when you get married? What are you looking for? Most people are saying, I want to be fully known and fully loved. I don't want to be constantly like having to amend the data and pretend and put on a show with the person in my home. I want them to know, you hear it in songs, I can just have a t-shirt on and he loves me. You know, you're like, I want to be at my most vulnerable, my least made up. I want to be fully me and fully accepted, fully desired, fully loved. You don't want to be like, well, he desires me, but it's because he doesn't know A, B, and C, and he can never know. That's a hard place to live till death do us part.
Right.
You want to be, you know me the best and worst. And even when you knew the worst, you still wanted me. That is so powerful when someone says that. I know you down to the saddest, most tragic parts of your story, and I still say I want you. That's a powerful bonding agent. And so you want that. You want that experience, but that means you got to go through that horrible experience of telling them some things you've done. And so you also have to know there will be an emotional response. I mean, I think of it, there was like an old Ben Stiller movie where I can't remember what it was called, where it was played for humor in the movie. Owen Wilson was the ex-boyfriend of his fiance and just kept talking about all their sexual experiences together. And it's not a Christian movie. It's not a whatever. It was like Meet the Fockers or something like that, you know, where it was like, you can see you're like, this is very uncomfortable.
Right.
And so even though this isn't religious, you can tell you're like, we don't like this. Yeah. We don't like thinking about those experiences you've had. So even if you're like, you just got to know, if I'm going to share with somebody, you're imagining your life together, you're imagining sharing a bed together, then you realize I shared it with some other people. I'm going to tell them that, and it's probably going to hurt at some level. Where's it going to land on the Richter scale? It's like a 1 to a 10, you don't know. But there is going to be an emotional response. But you don't want to wait till your wedding night to tell them that. You don't want to wait till you're married. So I think at some point when you go, this is a human being worthy of trust, and this is a relationship I see going someplace. Now I'm going to tell them some of what I've done and give them a chance to absorb that information. And they may need to come back to you again. Yeah. Now, how much data do you need to share? Enough for it to be an honest confession, and not enough for it to be traumatizing. And again, everyone's life is different. So this is where you really need some wise counsel around you to help you. People do this in Alcoholics Anonymous, different recovery programs. You go, how do I do my first step where I talk about where I've been?
Yeah.
but I don't share so much data that it's like, whoa, like triggering to somebody. So you go, where's an honest confession that doesn't take them through every gritty detail? There's a place for that. We always amend data, and you may need some good friends to help you figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
The other benefit of this, and then I'll stop on talking on this, is you want to watch that other person's capacity to forgive. Because if they can hear the worst parts of you and say, I'm sorry that happened, but I forgive you. Jesus forgives you. I forgive you because Jesus forgives you. And I still want you. That is so healing and so beautiful. It's a picture of Jesus' love for the church, right? I'll close with this idea. The book of Hosea. God has this prophet. He says, I want you to embody what I've experienced with my people. So God's saying, this is what the nation has been like to me. They're like my beloved who keeps cheating on me. And it's pretty graphic in Hosea. He pictures the nation as she keeps going and sleeping around in the city.
Yeah.
And then she gets worn out by her lovers and then sold off. And it's a really sad picture of someone who took what was meant to be for the beloved and took it elsewhere. And yet what's interesting is you don't see a God that says, and I will crush you. I mean, you see in Hosea chapter 2, he says, she went after her lovers and she forgot me, says the Lord. And he says, therefore, I will allure her. I will bring her to the wilderness and speak tenderly to her. And I will give her her vineyards and make the valley of trouble a doorway to hope. And there she will answer me as in the days of her youth, when I took her out of the land of Egypt. And in that day, declares the Lord, you'll call me my husband. You won't call me my master, because I will remove the names of the Baals, the masters, from your mouth, and you'll be remembered by my name. And they shall be remembered by name no more. And he says, and I will call you who were called no mercy, mercy. And I'll call you who were called not my people. I'll call you my people. So he's saying, this is the heart of God. God says, I see you in your brokenness, and I will speak tenderly to you and forgive you, and I will allure you and love you. And you want a spouse, you want to be married to someone who doesn't celebrate your sin, but you're not hiding it from them either.
Yeah.
They come out and they confess and forsake and find mercy. That's what God did. When we confess and forsake, he gives mercy. He says, I want to love you. I want to love my people. And when you can do that with somebody and they say, I still want you, it's powerful. It's really powerful. Scary. Don't do it right away. Don't do it date one. Yeah. But I would encourage you to do it at some level with wise counsel.
That's beautiful.